And we're live. Welcome to the 10th episode of Interchain FM. We're here with Aidan and Colin from Chainsafe. And for today, we will be talking all about Ethermint, what everyone's been waiting for since 2017 when we started talking about this thing. All right, so we'll do a quick round of intros. Will you guys do the honors, Aidan and Colin?
Absolutely. Well, thank you firstly for having us. We're really excited to be here to talk about Ethermint. Much anticipated conversation that we're having today. So yeah, just as a quick introduction, my name is Aidan. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Chainsafe Systems, and at Chainsafe, we are a blockchain research and development firm. We're currently around 45 people, and we're contributing to a whole bunch of different protocols where our mission is to build the infrastructure for Web3. So we're currently contributing alternative implementations of Ethereum 2.0, Filecoin. We're also building out an implementation of the Polkadot host. And obviously what we're here to talk about today, Ethermint. Outside of that, we also have a project called ChainBridge, which can connect a lot of these different blockchains, which definitely brings a lot of added value, we believe, to Ethermint. And I guess we can talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, thanks again for having us.
We've also had a previous episode with Greg from Chainsafe on to where we talked about ChainBridge. So we'll link that in the show notes as well as an additional.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, yeah, again, thank you for having us. I'm really excited to be here to talk about Ethermint. My name is Colin. I've been at Chainsafe for over 2 years now. I've worked on a variety of projects and products, but currently I'm focused on Lodestar, our implementation of ETH2 in TypeScript. I'm also focusing on an internal product that you'll be hearing more about moving forward. And then what we're here to talk about today, project manager for Ethermint. Really excited to get into it.
Yeah, great. So for people who have not been following Chainsafe's developments on Ethermint for the last whole year, what's going on there? Tell us everything. We want to know about where you are at, and any test nets you're currently running, how people can participate if there are. And we want to talk about Game of Ethermint. I don't think that has been publicly announced widely yet. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So maybe I'll just start with some brief background on how Chainsafe got involved with this product to begin with. Back in 2019, we got an initial grant from the ICF to take Ethermint from where the code base was at that point and bring it to the major functionality that we see today, which is basically being an implementation of the EVM built with the Cosmos SDK, fully interoperable with Cosmos, but also having all of the functionality of Ethereum and allowing developers to deploy Ethereum code on it with no overhead. So that wrapped up at the end of 2019. We then got a follow-up grant in the spring of this year to bring the project from where it was then into a fully productionized Cosmos zone. So we're in the midst of that grant now, and we are just wrapping up all of the pre-testnet deliverables. So these included some benchmarking, implementing the Web3 personal API to allow for key generation and account management that would be familiar to Ethereum developers. We're also implementing a way to handle pending state that is now almost complete. And then the really exciting stuff, then what you sort of touched on, is going to be first the first public testnet, and then the first incentivized public testnet, the Game of Ethermint. And the timing for this podcast really couldn't be better. We're excited to announce that we will be launching the first public Ethermint testnet tomorrow. We are finally there. We've done all of the internal testing that we can, and we're ready to show it to the public. So we really couldn't be more excited. You will be hearing from us on Twitter later today with the official announcement. And then tomorrow we will be releasing the endpoints along with comprehensive documentation about how you can join, what you can expect. There'll be a faucet, an automated faucet to allow for funds to be sent to users. So yeah, stay tuned to our Twitter in the next 48 hours. That's all going to be coming out and will be publicly available.
And what's your Twitter?
At Chainsafe TH at the end.
Yeah. So just Chainsafe with a TH at the end.
Okay, great. So I wanted to go back to a point that you made about Ethermint being Web3 compatible with existing Ethereum keys. Let's talk about that and why that's important, why that's a key feature of Ethermint.
Sure. I mean, without that, we would not be able to have feature parity with Ethereum. The idea behind the whole project is to allow Ethereum developers to deploy any contracts, any dApps that they have on Ethereum, and for that to work seamlessly out of the box on Ethermint. And so without the key generation and the account management that the Web3 personal API provides, none of that would be possible. And this was definitely one of the trickier things for us to implement. The way that accounts and keygen is handled in Cosmos is quite different from the way that it's handled in Ethereum. So there was some negotiation that we had to do with the code to get things to behave in the same way. But all that work is now complete. Actually, I wrote an article about it, which you can find on Chainsafe's Medium publication that came out a few weeks ago. So if you're interested in more of the technical details, you can check that out on our Medium. We also have quite a comprehensive documentation site, which can be accessed at docs.ethermint.zone. And there's a whole page on the Web3 personal API and how exactly that works.
Yeah. Who does it actually affect?
So really, any user who wants to get on Ethermint and generate public-private key pair will be affected by this. Anybody who's sending transactions between accounts would be affected by this. Anybody deploying contracts or apps, everyone really.
Well, so my question is more about what class of user is this is going to be affected, which is, does this user have to be an existing Ethereum user, or can they just enter into Ethermint and be instantly compatible out of the box? What are sort of the implications to people that way?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, the sort of all of the above is the simple answer. Anybody coming from Ethereum will be able to deploy any code that existed there directly to Ethermint without having to change anything. But that doesn't mean that you can't just come and write your own code on Ethermint directly. And we definitely want to see that, and we encourage that, and hope to see a lot of that on the testnet once that becomes public tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So really anybody who wants to get involved with the project can write completely new code or deploy existing code that they already had on Ethereum.
One of the kind of main things we're really trying to empower is developers who want to also take advantage of on-chain governance and get involved in the governance of the chain through a formal on-chain process. So we're really excited about the potential that brings to people who really do want that as an experience. And beyond that, we're also just really excited to bring instant finality to Ethereum based projects who can really get a lot out of this new paradigm that will exist as a result of Ethermint.
So you talk about on-chain governance. Can you, sorry, Chjango.
No, go ahead.
Can you describe the mechanism by which Ethermint accomplishes this? Is this like the Cosmos SDK governance mechanism or something custom?
Exactly. This will definitely be the standards. And through that, we will definitely have an ability for things to evolve over time. The goal here is to allow for this to be governed by the users. And so as things kind of grow, we do expect things to change, just like things can change within the Cosmos ecosystem as well, throughout these different projects. So it's definitely going to be exciting to see as new things come up, new additions get suggested, really how that community responds to these things and chooses to get involved more directly.
So I want to ask a more philosophical question, which we kind of implied with the value proposition of Ethermint being distinctly that of having on-chain governance, right? Because with the launch of Ethermint, we're going to have essentially ETH1 functionality, except running on proof of stake. So, if we're saying that like ETH1 is definitively the sort of economic base layer for all DeFi activity, then like why do we need Ethermint, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's a really good question.
Yeah, is it that like proof of stake distinctly allows us some sort of governance functionality that maybe proof of work does not necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and not necessarily a function of proof of stake, rather a function of the governance processes that come with the Cosmos SDK. So I would definitely say that what we're really hoping that people get really excited about is also when we get some of the benchmarks released, which we're waiting to rerun them once we get Stargate updated, or update to Stargate, I should say. And so we're more effectively able to convey what the capacity is for developers. But that, with instant finality, as well as with obviously the on-chain governance component, we believe is extremely compelling in that it's completely distinct from Ethereum. Ethereum will never have on-chain governance, and to be totally frank, not everyone's going to want that, but we do believe that there's a large portion of developers, as we're seeing interest with on-chain governed chains in general across the ecosystem, that will actually want to have this formal on-chain process. And it's not to say that Ethereum doesn't have a formal process for governance. However, it does not happen on-chain. And so we definitely believe that with everything happening across the ecosystem with on-chain governance in the last, 2 years, really 1 year and a bit, will really create a massive incentive for developers to feel like there is something that's enough of a value proposition outside of just the technicalities that are obviously really exciting as well.
What sorts of applications of on-chain governance on Ethermint do you envision emerging?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well. That's to be seen. That's the kind of beauty of it. And we're excited to, have these things come up that really do present things or bring things to the mix that we never actually imagined. But things, for example, such as new features, new potential for integrations and work to be done for the chain, general management of the future vision and direction of the platform are just kind of the high level, easy, low-hanging fruit sort of value propositions of on-chain governance, where so much can kind of come that we're excited to see, especially as we bring forth this new community that can be this glue between Cosmos and Ethereum, right? The goal here is not to be just a Cosmos Ethereum or not just an Ethereum on Cosmos, but to be, a project that's able to really add value to both of the communities and attract people from both communities in a meaningful way.
Yeah, yeah. Chainsafe, the engineering firm of building bridges.
Yeah, I mean, we like to say that the things that most excite us are projects that bring together communities that otherwise won't really have that capacity to come together, and they really need someone to act as that bridge, no pun intended, and really facilitate those interactions, because it's really hard when projects do have the blinders on and they are just so focused on shipping incredible things to really have that holistic approach to really having a widespread understanding of what the real needs are across these different ecosystems and how similar they really are.
Yeah. I like to use the metaphor of, let's say each layer one that is siloed is a state, right, in the United States, if we're going to use that as an example. And this is before interstate highways have been built. And now you're kind of introducing the interstate highway. There's toll roads, there's borders, but at least it's not completely siloed, right? On like an island of its own anymore. You could, cross over, exchange, partake in each other's economic activity, and in that way really grow the global economy, so to speak.
100%. I would add to that and say that for a certain time in blockchain, or in the blockchain ecosystem, there was a need to push things in a general sense to be a platform to have the functionality to do a whole wide range of things. And now we're getting to a point of time where it's almost similar to back in the day when people would fork Bitcoin and add a couple kind of functions to it that would add a value proposition outside of just transactions in a basic sense. And that's what we're seeing today, with people not needing that general functionality anymore and rather needing more specific use cases that actually answer to their needs, that also leverage outside projects that also have these incredible value propositions that can then, be used across the board. So it's really, we believe, the best time to be in the blockchain space, because no longer do you have to build everything. Rather, you can rely on those states, as your example used, to also have, some kind of value, whether it be a natural resource or some type of job, through education systems, right? And to leverage each other and add value to one another as well.
Right, yeah.
So speaking of interstate highways, will there be interstate highways between Ethermint and other chains, both Ethereum and Cosmos? How will developers move their bulk goods, or so to speak, assets?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are a few kind of ways to answer that question. Firstly, we are also the developers of a project that can leverage EVM compatibility, which makes this really exciting, is that we're going to be users of this platform as well as the maintainers of this platform, along with obviously our partner projects. So we're able to leverage ChainBridge to simply deploy our smart contracts that can then interact with any of the chains that would like to interact with Ethermint. So for example, we currently have Ethereum support, of course, ETC support, Avalanche C-chain support, as well as centrifuge support through a substrate palette. And then on top of that, we're seeing a whole bunch of other projects, including Cello and others that are now not Cello, but these others are now starting to even integrate ChainBridge themselves. So we're seeing 3 projects at the moment who are implementing ChainBridge into their projects. So what we're hoping to see is the ability for all of these projects to leverage each other and utilize Ethermint as Ethermint goes live. But for now, at least a focus on Ethereum from our end would definitely enable a whole wide range of use cases way beyond just a simple token transfer, which is really, we believe, just the first step in bridging, whereas now, years later from when that functionality was kind of novel, we're starting to see the ability, for example, of projects to utilize the bridge in our generic handler for things like accounting across a DeFi protocol that could have tokens across different blockchains that are all coordinated through a single blockchain, so that even if you have a token on Ethermint, it could be controlled by its actual contract on Ethereum. And so hopefully soon we'll be able to announce more details into what exactly I'm alluding to and which project is doing that. But what we're really starting to see is the capacity for the ability to execute arbitrary calls across blockchains, and what that will provide for Ethermint as an ability to really be an extension to a lot of the stuff as well that's happening on Ethereum, and not just a place where you have to deploy your own stuff from scratch, which it can also obviously facilitate. But there's so much more to, I think, Ethermint than just this new place for developers, by helping extend a lot of these other blockchains as well.
So you touched on the idea that you'd have to build something from scratch. That's an allusion to kind of Cosmos, right?
Sorry, what I meant from that, and maybe I didn't word that correctly, is just deploying it from scratch, redeploying your contracts. So there's more to the potential UX transfer due to the ChainBridge than just redeploying your contracts, though obviously that's possible as well. But also, just to go back to what you were saying, Chris, IBC will also be supported, of course. And so the ability for Ethermint to be an EVM chain for the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem as well is a massive feature that should not be underestimated.
Mm-hmm. Is that available to smart contract developers as well? Can EVM contracts send and receive IBC packets?
Eventually, that will be possible. Currently, the status with IBC is it's part of the Stargate upgrade. We are mostly done the development of that update. There is a lot more integration testing. It touches almost every aspect of the code base, so it hasn't been a minor undertaking. But we're hoping to get that done by the end of the year. So at that point, we will support a basic version of IBC out of the box with Stargate. But there are a lot of really exciting, enhancements, you could say, that we are discussing with Interchain and internally for how we can make IBC even more powerful moving into next year.
Well, we touched on some possible use cases of Ethermint, but it's useful to clarify whether Ethermint is an EVM chain on its own that runs on Tendermint, or whether we can explore other ways to use Ethermint too, right? Is there there's multiple paths of using it is what I mean, which is there's going to be a persistent EVM chain that is essentially running alongside ETH1 and like ETH1. Alternatively, if you want to deploy a completely new, like sovereign Ethermint chain, you can also do that, right? Let's explore those options and that spectrum of options with Ethermint.
Yeah, 100%. There's going to be the main Ethermint zone, which will be maintained by us and then by the community. But anybody who would like to can fork the code, spin up their own instance of Ethermint. And then what's really exciting is they can start to customize for whatever use case they desire. It will add scalability. It will add a lot more customization. Building using the Cosmos SDK stack has a lot more. It's more modular, so it adds a lot more customization potential than what you would get just developing on Ethereum, since there's basically just the one mainnet. So yeah, I mean, the possibilities are as many as what the users can come up with, and we're really looking forward to see what people do come up with as we move
and one
into
of the
this
things there
testnet.
to add, I would say, is that everyone needs to remember that we're also just building upon a EVM module that anyone can use within the Cosmos SDK. And so the potential for projects there to utilize the EVM next to other modules is really incredible as well as to what can come from that. Because as Colin said, this is to be a general zone where anything can be done. However, the scope is general, where there are so many projects that could come up utilizing this technology that leverage a lot of the work that we've done. And really, we're hoping to build as much of a vibrant community around this, because being that it's open source, the more people who are using this, the more impact this will have moving forward, as we'll have more people contributing to the vision, more people utilizing the code base, so testing things as they're coming up, and really just creating more impact in general. So yeah, we're really excited over the potential of this really just being built upon a few building blocks that could then be leveraged across the Cosmos ecosystem.
Yeah, you touched on a really important distinction here, which is the fact that Ethermint is really just a module within the greater Cosmos SDK development framework. So I want to go back to a point that Colin had pointed out about Ethereum being a single mainnet. So it is worth kind of digging deeper into the differences between what deploying a smart contract on Ethereum is versus what plugging and playing an Ethermint module within the SDK to kind of tinker around with it alongside other modules. Like with modules in the Cosmos SDK, the best analogy that I've come across was that it's like the rules of physics that you have to abide by. And as, I guess, God in the like playing God in blockchain, if you deploy a module, you're essentially able to kind of manipulate the laws of physics that works in this, universe. Whereas on ETH1, the laws of physics has already been set for you, and you're building a smart contract in that world. So maybe
I would just add to that in saying that one of the incredible things about this is that really we're setting a roadmap from the beginning, but that then, and obviously we're working on that roadmap with all of the different stakeholders and ensuring that it aligns with everything. However, moving forward, those decisions will be led by a formal on-chain process, where a lot of these decisions will be conducted through the governance proposal kind of system. So we're really excited to see kind of what comes from that, and that, it's just a different approach. And again, it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just clearly proven that there is a massive value add to having that as an option for people, as we've seen a massive interest, not just in protocol layers being governed on chain, but governance tokens in general being a massive interest in Ethereum even.
The on-chain process is pertaining to the persistent EVM chain that you're talking about, right? That's going to be running.
Exactly. And in relation to what you're kind of saying, in terms of certain things being set in stone and others being more fluid, I wouldn't say that, this is one or the other, rather something that will allow people to, not necessarily conduct these conversations through a more, through the way in which things happen on Ethereum right now. It'll be a new way to add future decisions.
Going back to what you're saying about the laws of physics and having these modules that you can use to change them, anybody could just fork the main Ethermint zone and use the Cosmos stack to change some of the functionality and use that to customize their whatever they spin up to their own use cases. And I think that's something we're going to see a lot of as we get into the testnet and then the mainnet launch, and really excited to see how people will be able to customize. And at the end of the day, if people do that, it's going to be much cheaper and faster for them to run experiments than to do that on mainnet Ethereum. So it's a very powerful forum for experimentation, and I look forward to seeing what people do with it.
Can you talk a little bit more about this main Ethermint chain that you're planning to launch? In particular, I assume that in order to have proof of stake in a governance system, you'll need a token. And how is that sort of being allocated or determined?
So
how do you expect it will evolve over time?
We're in the process right now of formalizing exactly that with our different stakeholders. That's not a decision that we ourselves are determining, rather something we're working on as a collective with the different stakeholders behind this project. So unfortunately, we don't have much to answer right now, as that's still something being decided by the different stakeholders. Like, we ourselves are not making that decision. Our scope is very, very clear in terms of what our aims are for this project. So yeah, I mean, there are going to be some really exciting things, we believe, if that we're deciding right now with the different stakeholders in regards to incentivization of the different Ethermint stakeholders, being Ethereum actors and Cosmos actors, as well as developers, validators, and all the people that in a more traditional approach to incentives in a blockchain don't necessarily get as much thought beyond a very linear approach to how we incentivize them.
So maybe let's talk about the user story of how somebody might be able to do something cool with Ethermint and maybe using ChainBridge. So like, what does a fully mature system like this entail?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that we're constantly seeing our users really answer that themselves. So one, for example, would be to extend a lot of the more expensive decisions that would be required by a community on Ethermint, and then utilize ChainBridge to interact with potentially their treasury that would then be able to directly, for example, connect to something like Uniswap without having to send those funds over the bridge. And so the potential there is incredible to really have, the extension of what could be an Ethereum-based project now migrate at least partial functionality to Ethermint while still utilizing all of the things that are on Ethereum. And so that's one potential, user flow. Another would be to outright deploy everything onto Ethermint and just have basically another version of their protocol or platform or whatever terminology they use to describe their smart contracts onto Ethermint, and then have that act independently of these things that are deployed on the current Ethereum mainnet. And then another potential would be to just write smart contracts that you fully only intend to deploy on Ethermint, that then could interact more directly through the smart contracts with different Cosmos SDK based chains. The beauty of the Cosmos design is that a hub can be a zone, and really the functionality can truly be a little bit fluid in terms of what use different projects are providing. And so what we've seen in the Cosmos world is that not everyone plans on just deploying a zone, but also plan on deploying or have deployed hubs. And so the potential for Ethermint to even connect to these different hubs and to these different chains is really incredible. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways in which we see developers truly taking advantage of not just the Ethereum on Tendermint using the Cosmos SDK, but rather the Cosmos ecosystem as a whole, or not, right? That's really up to you. as the developer.
So what we can anticipate is essentially smart contracts on steroids after Ethermint gets launched.
I mean, that would be a great headline. I'm not too sure how technically we would back that up, but definitely that would be a catchy headline.
Yeah, I would. I'm just wondering what the risks of reentrancy bugs would look like at that point if, let's say, we're kind of doing smart contracts and interoperating at an interchain level. That might introduce some interesting exploits that we might want to explore.
Yeah, I mean, the more surfaces that you are exposing yourself to, as we're seeing with DeFi right now, definitely introduces more vulnerabilities that otherwise would not be possible when you have a closed system. So there's definitely a need to take things like security and auditing, both on the technical side of things, but also on the economic side of things, which we're really only just seeing become an important aspect of auditing in a general sense due to a lot of these DeFi exploits. You very seriously, this isn't a joke. It isn't all fun and games. This also does require people to take this very seriously because, the more surfaces that you're adding to your project definitely create more attack vectors. But one of the cool things about, again, not to shill Cosmos too much, but one of the cool things about that is that you just need to trust whoever you want to trust, right? The beauty with sovereign chains is that if you don't want to trust that chain, don't trust that chain. And so really that's up to you to decide who you want to interact with. Similarly to Ethereum, you can decide who is your oracle. You can decide who is your, provider for a stable coin. Though yes, you are introducing a lot of attack vectors, but that sovereign aspect of it really does give you the potential to choose and pick which surfaces you want to be vulnerable to. So that really is up to you, and it's not as if, that's not your decision or choice.
Mm-hmm. Just from observing the space and the types and numbers of projects that do choose sovereignty above all, it does seem like a minority. Most projects do tend to want to be able to trust in the security of a chain, and that's why proof of work on Ethereum 1 has been so compelling, right? It's because we want to kind of lean on the existing security and trustworthiness of something without having to think too much about it. That being said, why would a project like Uniswap, for example, find it valuable to deploy a complementary and composable but secondary application on an Ethermint chain, for example?
That's a really good question, and the beauty of open source code is that the actual project itself doesn't have to be the one to do it. Anyone can choose to do that, right? And so what we're seeing with a lot of the forks of Uniswap, which there are a whole bunch of them at the moment, is that that's not really a decision that any one company can truly decide on. That is something that's up to the users who want that functionality. And so we definitely see a lot of things being deployed that otherwise don't necessarily need the people who wrote that code to be the ones deploying it. And so really that's up to the users of Ethermint and what they want to see, because at the end of the day, things are compatible for them to simply just deploy it. So that's not really necessarily up to the projects themselves, rather the users of those projects that want to potentially see that functionality now be embraced by the Ethermint community.
What I'm hearing is the potential first users of Ethermint might be Uniswap forks that might find this useful.
I mean, what you're seeing, for example, with SushiSwap is that there are proposals to deploy it now in a whole bunch of EVM compatible chains. And that's, something that I don't know if it was anticipated by the Uniswap community. But even from a UI perspective, you see the Uniswap UI now being deployed across a whole bunch of different providers, decentralized storage providers, interesting name service providers like Handshake. There's a whole bunch of things that we're seeing now that is truly embracing the ethos of open source, which is that once it's out there, it's really up to the people to do with it as they choose. The open source license is pretty straight up in terms of what you get and what you don't get in terms of assurances. So that's really, again, it's up to the users to decide what they really want from this project and to push it forward. Now, if the actual Uniswap team were to deploy on Ethermint, even if there were other forks, would that kind of branding and trust not translate? It would absolutely translate and probably drive more people to utilize their deployment of the protocol. However, that's not necessary. And with the code being open source and verifiable, it's really not a requirement.
Yeah, and it's an important point that you covered, which is there's this huge potential of each existing protocol as well as new protocols to augment each other's features and kind of create this really feature-rich application that users could benefit from in the future without it being sort of like zero-sum or one or the other, which is very powerful.
Absolutely. We definitely believe that the exciting thing about blockchain technology is that it is introducing a whole bunch of value that otherwise was not captured by the traditional financial world. And so we're quite literally introducing value to the world, and that this isn't as if the money you're seeing, as the total market cap value of all these chains was literally put into these chains by someone at some point, right? These are free-flowing things that are quite literally creating value from a lot of money that's come in, but that's not the requirement to create large amounts of value for people. And so the potential for that to be translated to, these different projects and it not having to be a zero-sum, transfer of value is also hugely important to take into consideration.
Yeah. We did go into sorry, my mind blinked a little bit. Sorry, my mind is completely blank right now.
Yeah, no worries at all. I mean, one thing to highlight there is that there is this notion, within any economic community that, they need to be the ones to succeed, and for them to succeed, others need to fail because of this general understanding of how our current economic system works, with the fact of it being mostly zero sum. However, we do believe that for you to deploy on Ethermint is not taking anything away from your deployment on Ethereum, rather is creating new avenues for value add that otherwise you would not have access to. And this is an incredibly important distinction from the general narrative of even projects like Ethermint that are there to convince people to abandon Ethereum and come to their new platforms. That is absolutely not our call here. That's not our call to action. Our call to action is come take advantage of this incredibly extensible and useful extension if that's what you want to make of it. If you want to make of it is this new platform for you to deploy on, do that as well. But for us, the value here is not in Ethereum failing for us to succeed, rather in helping Ethereum utilize this as potentially just another layer, like many other protocols out there that are doing it right now. And that's an incredibly important distinction for us, especially as people who are contributing to Ethereum 2.0, to ETC. Our bridge connects to Avalanche's C chain, to Celo. All of these chains are EVM compatible. And so for us, we truly believe that value can be fluidly exchanged beyond just these chains that I've mentioned, because at the end of the day, most of the people that have been here for a long time did it simply to disintermediate a lot of people that are currently taking and extracting most of the value that's created in the world. And we truly do not believe in the narrative that to disintermediate the world through blockchain requires us to intermediate them through a specific blockchain. And that's something that we definitely believe is a crucial distinction between our project, our community's project, and many other projects out there, and how they're, marketing their capacity to, for example, replace one of these other chains that I've mentioned.
That's an excellent way of putting it. To disintermediate the world and intermediate it with a single blockchain. That's good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's always something I like to mention, because at the end of the day, before a lot of the people that are now very loud and passionate about a specific blockchain, they were just people who were not bag holders and were just interested in the actual functionality of this technology, which is disintermediation through the codification of human relationship. Very simply put, that's why we're not Bitcoiners. That's why we're blockchainers.
We're blockchainers, not Bitcoiners.
Yeah, exactly. Which also includes Bitcoin. No hate to Bitcoin, but everything serves its own purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maxiism is boring.
Yeah, it really is. And as we've said, there's only so much value this technology can bring to the world if we are all just focused on solving every single problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Well,
sorry.
It's probably also self-defeating in the sense that if just for the same reason that, a basket of money and power attracts zero-sum competition to control it, as you see in governments or large corporations and the associated dysfunction which results, the same is true of, say, an on-chain governance system of one blockchain to rule them all. So not only is it, philosophically objectionable, I suppose, it's also practically unworkable.
100%. 100%. Because at the end of the day, if you're monopolizing an entire market to the point where there is no value to be created anymore, how are you actually moving beyond where you're at the moment? And that's something that we're seeing really across the world right now, and governments failing to acknowledge the monopolization of industries as a whole. And that is just a massive, massive problem that unfortunately so many people in the blockchain space are repeating by not being honest about, what is the reason for the decisions that they're making or the opinions that they have. And so hopefully conversations like these can expand people's horizons and make them see that there's more to this than just number go up. Even though obviously that's an important aspect of it, we want to create true value and utilitarian value in these chains, but that can't be the only measure of success.
Absolutely. Yeah, so going back to the interstate highway analogy, I just want to self-indulge and say that if you're an existing DApp on Ethereum and you're kind of like a chain, or you're like a restaurant that has become very successful, you might be able to create a franchise and create another chain inside of another blockchain while, making passage across a interstate highway. So it really isn't like you don't have to pick one or the other at this point. We're really we're really kind of passing through a rite of passage in blockchain technology at this point. Like there's no going back once this innovation has been introduced to the ecosystem. There's no need to just only pick one chain anymore.
100%. And it's, incredible to see so many different initiatives that are now realizing that vision that's a few people really only had years ago, that now so many people share, and has been proven as a model for success. And then maybe just to plug our conference that's upcoming from December 2nd to 4th, if people do want to listen to conversations in general that people from the different projects that we contribute to, as well as our own team members, are talking about. So, all of the different protocols that we contribute to, a lot of the founders and contributors to them, as well as specifically for the Cosmos community, we have talks by Aidan, Ethan, and Yelena from Informal Systems. We have talks from Billy from the ICF, as well as Pong from Tendermint. So please, if anyone's interested, sign up is directed from cscon.chainsafe.io. We'd love to have you out there. There will be hopefully time to ask questions to all of these leaders and really hear from them what they think about the stuff that they're doing to contribute to Cosmos. So really excited to be able to share a few of these ideas across the different blockchains and hopefully bring people to the table that otherwise don't have too much shared conversations.
Yeah, and speaking of shared conversations, we have interchain conversations coming up, and Chainsafe will be there as well, right?
Absolutely, we do. Oh, we will. Sorry.
One final thing to announce is we're also going to be starting community calls, regular community calls about Ethermint. The whole team will be there to answer any questions that users might have. And at this point, our first testnet will be live. So we're really exciting to open up that avenue to interface with the community further and answer their more technical questions.
And what can be done on your first testnet?
Everything that you can do on Ethereum, you should be able to do on this testnet. I mean, the specifics of that are up to the user, but at this point, we have full functionality that we were aiming for, and it's just a matter of testing, security, and then hammering down the final economics before we get into the incentivized testnet.
What's sort of the gas implications for somebody who has already deployed a DApp on Ethereum that could, gain something of value with using Ethermint and participating in the testnet?
So, I mean, obviously with the testnet, there won't be any real value, at least for the first iteration. But when we do get into the incentivized testnet and then eventually the mainnet, I can't give you exact numbers right now until we have finished rerunning our benchmarks after Stargate upgrade is complete. But I can say that it will definitely be less expensive than deploying to mainnet Ethereum, probably by a large factor. But I really do look forward to publishing the results of our final benchmarking because that will just be really exciting for everyone to be able to see exactly what the differences are.
And one of the things, if you're interested in reading more about it, at docs.ethermint.zone/basics/gas, you'll be able to read more about a few of the differences that do exist due to the Cosmos SDK and how you can kind of navigate those differences. So if you are interested, please, Chjango, if you could add that link as well, people can read for themselves what a few of those differences look like, and just to understand how gas works within Ethermint. So, the team has worked really hard to ensure that our docs really do help users both functionally and just in general to get a really good sense of how Ethermint works. And so hopefully as things change and as people make requests for more information, we'll be there to facilitate any updates that are necessary to the docs to really ensure that users have everything they need moving forward when interacting with Ethermint, because that's definitely one of the most underappreciated part of development, which is good docs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if one wanted to participate in the incentivized testnet, what can they expect from Game of Ethermint, and how does one participate?
So the overall system is going to be very similar to the Game of Stakes or Game of Zones that many users may have already participated in, at least if they're coming from the Cosmos side. The details of exactly how the testnet will be incentivized are still in discussion, but we will be trying to mimic mainnet conditions as closely as possible. So we will be publishing a comprehensive document to explain how all of that is going to work when the actual mainnet economics are finalized. And we hope to have that early next year, but we definitely don't want to rush it. And obviously there's a lot of important decisions with a lot of valuable stakeholders involved. So we're not at liberty to disclose too much yet, but we're really looking forward to be able to share a comprehensive plan.
One of the things to add there is that, what makes Ethermint a little bit different than these other previous games is that we have developers to account for as well, and smart contract functionality to account for. And so there will be a little bit more nuance compared to the previous games, but very much fall in line with the general notion and the general rules of how things have been conducted in the past.
Great. Why don't we wrap up the last 4 minutes that we have and kind of connect everything together with mainnet Ethermint coming to fruition, Peggy as well as ChainBridge in this sort of like fully, I don't want to say mature, but deployed early products in this Interchain ecosystem, like what that's going to look like to users with all those things, including IBC on the hub and other chains that decide to connect with the hub and each other.
Sure. I mean, just to wrap up everything that has been said, we have the Ethermint mainnet zone, which will be going live next year. That will be maintained by us and then the community. It will be able to connect to any other Cosmos zone through IBC that comes with Stargate, and eventually through enhanced IBC, the designs of which we're working on now. And then beyond that, it will be able to connect outside of the Cosmos ecosystem via ChainBridge to the current integrations that we mentioned, as well as many more that will be added in the near and medium term future. So really excited for those further ChainBridge announcements. Anybody who has current code on Ethereum will be able to deploy to Ethermint out of the box. Anybody who would like to write new code and leverage the instant finality and proof of stake, but still within the EVM context, will be able to deploy. And then potentially most exciting is that they will then be able to interact by passing value as well as arbitrary data within the Cosmos ecosystem and then outside of the Cosmos ecosystem also.
All right, great. And does this have any compatibility with ETH2, right? Because both would have finality, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the road to ETH2 is still a long one. Obviously, we're extremely excited about the Beacon chain launch and phase 0, which is so imminent now. But the short answer is yes, we do want to be ETH2 compatible. The long answer is that there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that still haven't been built on the ETH2 side. And so exactly how we get there is very much an open question. But yeah, I mean, that would definitely be really awesome to see whenever the full functionality of ETH2 is achieved.
Great. Well, from the Cosmos side, we're extremely excited to see the confluence of all of these new products come to the ecosystem. That's going to be very exciting, and can't wait for the Interchain. We're going to have
100%.
blockchain circa 2021.
Thank you so much for having us today. It's been such a pleasure to talk. And hopefully when we do get closer to the launch and we have more to discuss in regards to the results of the game of Ethermint and the economic side of things, hopefully we can have another conversation about those different topics that, unfortunately we just didn't want to discuss today, as there's just so much that we're working on together still with the different stakeholders. So hopefully soon we can follow up and share more with the community about all the exciting things that are to come and how they can get more involved directly.
Well, yeah, looking forward to it. We're always planning hackathons, so by early next year we'll have another one coming soon, and perhaps we could integrate a fully functional Ethermint then, mainnet.
That's incredibly exciting to hear, and we would love for that to happen. So looking forward to making that happen. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for all the listeners who tuned in with us in the live recording, and thank you to those who are listening to Interchain FM in the podcast.